Hello again. This is another tutorial for knitting, and I'm going to carry on with the same swatch that I've used on the previous tutorials. This one I'm going to show you how to increase and also to decrease. So I've done an extra couple of rows of the stocking stitch, which is 1 row knit and 1 row purl. Usually increase would happen on a sleeve or sometimes on the body of a garment. If it's on the sleeve, it's very often that you would increase 1 stitch at each end of a knit row. So I'll show you how that's done. So we've got the needle into the loop or stitch as normal, as if you were going to knit. But this time we're going to wind the yarn around, pull the needle back, but instead of slipping this stitch here on the left hand needle off, we're going to go into the back of the stitch. So you can see there that I've actually gone into the back, and we're going to wrap the yarn around again, pull the needle back, and now we're going to slide off. So we've gained an extra stitch, and you can see the extra stitch there because there's a little sort of a purl type stitch. So you would then carry on knitting to the end of the row, but we're not going to go right to the end because the final increase will be into the stitch before the final stitch. So I'll just knit along this row. On a pattern it would often say for sleeves, increase 1 stitch at each end of the next and every following 4th row or 5th row, etc. But I will show you how to do it if it does work out to be onto a row where you'd got a purl stitch. So we're now at the last 2 stitches on this row, and we're going to go into the stitch as if we're going to knit, wrap the yarn around, pull this needle back but don't slip off the loop from the left hand needle, and then we're going to again go into the back of the stitch, wrap the yarn around, pull the needle back and then slide off. So again we've gained that extra stitch there, and then just knit the final stitch. So we'll now have 22 stitches rather than the 20 that we started with. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. If you were to need to increase on the purl row, I'll just show you how to do that. So as a normal purl, we would go into the top of the loop so that the right hand needle is over the top of the left, and we would wind the yarn around. But again, we're not going to slide this stitch off, we're going to go into the back of the stitch, yarn around the needle, pull back, and again slip off and onto the right hand needle, so you would have 2 stitches instead of the 1. So I'm just going to undo that, and again at the other end you would do exactly the same thing, but on the last the second to last stitch you would do the increase. So I'll just purl this row as normal. I would try, wherever possible, to do the increases on a knit row because it's much easier to do. So, oops, I'll start again. So I'll work a purl row and then I'll show you how to do the decrease. And it's definitely a good idea to practice these stitches before you actually make a garment, just so that you're quite confident with the stitches that you're doing. I'll just zoom out slightly. So there we've completed the purl row. We've still got the 22 stitches, and again, sometimes on a sleeve, if it's a raglan sleeve, the one that goes upwards to a point, you would cast off some stitches before you start the decrease. So I will just show you how to cast off. I'll just cast off 2 stitches at either side of the next row. So we knit the first stitch as normal, and then we knit the second stitch. We're now going to put the needle into the loop of the first stitch, and we're going to pull that loop over the second stitch. So again, we're going to knit the next stitch, and then we're going to pass the first stitch over the second stitch, and that's cast off 2 stitches there. And then you would knit to the end of the row, and then the next cast off would be on the purl row. So I'll just show you how to do a cast off on the purl side. So now we've got 2 stitches cast off at the beginning of the knit row. We'll now cast off 2 stitches at the beginning of the purl row. So we purl the first stitch as normal, and then we purl the second stitch, and now we're going to put the needle into the first stitch and pull it over the top of the second stitch. I'm going to purl the next stitch, and then we take the first stitch and bring it over the top of the second stitch, and then you would purl to the end. So it may tell you to cast off 5 stitches, it may be 10, but you just do exactly the same thing. Work each stitch and then take the first loop over the second loop. And just purl across to the end of this row. So we've now decreased by casting off stitches. We've cast off 2 stitches at the beginning of each row here. So I'll now show you how to decrease stitches. So it might tell you to, it might come up as an abbreviation where it's knit 1, slip 1, pass slip stitch over, and that's how you would decrease on this side, and at the other side we just work 2 stitches together. So you would always knit the first stitch to keep the edge nice and neat. So we'll knit the first one, and then we slip 1, knit 1, and then like we did with the cast off, we're going to take the loop from this stitch and pass it over the other stitch, and then you would knit to the last 3 stitches. So it's just the normal knit stitch all the way along. And when we've reached the last 3 stitches, we're going to now knit these 2 stitches together. So we put the needle behind the second stitch and catch both of the loops together. Yarn over like a normal knit stitch, pull the needle back, and we're going to slip the 2 stitches off together, and then we would knit the last stitch. So you can see there that we've got a decrease at either side of the work. And then your next row would be a purl row, and then on the following row, if the pattern asks you to decrease alternate rows, the decrease will always be on the knit row. So you would be able to just work 1 stitch, slip 1, knit 1, and pass the slip stitch over. I'll just show you again. I'll do the purl row and then I'll come back to the decrease row. I've worked another purl row off camera, and I'll show you again how to do that decrease row on the knit side. So we're going to knit the first stitch, we're going to slip the second stitch, we're going to knit the third stitch, and then we're going to pass the slip stitch over the knitted stitch, and then knit to the last 3 stitches, and at the end we're just going to knit the 2 stitches together and then just knit the final stitch. So we're at the last 3, so we go into both loops, yarn over like a normal knit stitch, pull the needle back and slide the 2 stitches off together, and then knit the final stitch. And once you've done a couple, you'll be able to see that there's a diagonal stitch that's going to work all the way up the top of the sleeve or the back or whatever part of a garment that you're actually making. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I hope that you'll join me for the next knitting tutorial. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.